All right, well, today we're going to be looking at multiplying integers. And with this section, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at multiplying integers where there are two integers. We'll also be looking at multiplying three different integers. Then we're going to be looking at multiplying integers using exponents. And finally, we're going to dive into multiplying integers in algebraic expressions. So let's go ahead and begin with multiplying two integers. All right, so for any of these multiplication problems that we're doing with integers, basically what you want to do is you're going to treat them like normal multiplying of whole numbers, except for you're going to apply the integer rules of multiplying. And there are a couple rules that you can follow. The first rule is going to be that if you multiply a positive by a positive, it's always positive. If you multiply a negative by a negative, it's always negative. And you multiply a negative by a positive or a positive by a negative, it's negative. That's one way of looking at it. Or you can think of whenever you're multiplying by a negative, you're taking the answer and then you're taking the opposite. So let me give you some examples. So for number one, we have 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is just simply 20. There are no negative signs, so it leaves us 20. Now, for number 2, we have negative 3 times 6. So we do 3 times 6, and we get 18. Now, there's only one negative sign, so think of it as the opposite of 18 is negative 18. Or if we have a negative and a positive, it's always a negative. Now, let's look at number 3. We have, again, I would do 6 times 8, and 6 times 8 is 48. And then I would say the opposite, since we have the first negative sign, the opposite of 48 is negative 48. See right here. And then the opposite of negative 48 is back to 48. Again, let me show it to you one more time. I'll start off with the opposite of 48 is negative 48. And then the opposite of negative 48 is positive 48. So our answer is 48. Or you can think of it as a negative times a negative is always going to be a positive. Now, for number 4, I notice that I'm multiplying by 0, so it doesn't matter what I'm multiplying. It's just always going to be 0. If you multiply anything by 0, it becomes 0. All right, so hopefully this made some sense to you. Let's go ahead and move on to multiplying 3 integers. All right, so again, if I multiply, here's another rule I'm going to give you. If you have an odd number of negative signs, the answer is always negative. So let me write this down. All right, so again, an odd number of negative signs equals a negative answer. So now all we have to do is I'm going to multiply all 3 numbers. Again, I'm going to ignore the negative sign to begin with. So 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 4 is 24. Okay? And then I see I have 1, 2. I have 2 negative signs, and that's even. Therefore, it stays the same, and the answer is 24. Let's look at number 6. I do 3 times 5, which is 15, times 10. And then 15 times 10 is 150. Now I count my negative signs. I have 1, 2, 3 negative signs. 3 is an odd number, so I'm going to give it a negative sign, so it's negative 150. Okay? And then finally, I see for number 7, it's negative 15 times 14 times 0. I'm multiplying all the way across, and so I notice there's that 0. If I multiply anything by 0, the answer becomes 0, so my final answer is 0. So there is multiplying 3 different integers. Now let's go ahead and try some that have an exponent. So here is a rule I want you guys to understand. If I have negative 3 in parentheses to the second power, this equals negative 3 times negative 3. Now, if I have negative 3 to the second power like this, it means something different. Now, this is what you have to understand. For the first example I gave, the entire number, negative 3, is in parentheses, so the entire thing is being squared. And so it would be negative 3 times negative 3. Now, in this case, with the red number I have here, only the 3 has a exponent of 2. So I'm really going to be doing 3 times 3. And you may ask, well, what happens to the negative sign? Well, it's saying whatever 3 squared is, I'm taking the opposite of. So I'm basically going to do negative 1 times 3 times 3. And that changes the answer sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. Negative 3 times negative 3 gets us positive 9. Negative 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times negative 1 gives us negative 9. So I have two different answers here. So there's a distinguished difference between these, okay? All right, so let's look at number 8. I'm going to have, since it is in parentheses, I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And I would write it out. So now I can do 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4 times 2. And that gets us, what, 8? And now I count out my negative signs. I have 1, 2, 3 negative signs. 3 is odd. Odd is always negative, so it's an answer of negative 8. Let's try our next one here. We have, again, the negative 5 is in parentheses, so it's negative 5 times negative 5. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 5, which is 25. I have 2 negative signs, which is even. Therefore, the answer remains positive. It's 25. All right, let's look at number 10. For number 10, I have negative 3 times, and again, the negative 2 is in parentheses, so negative 3 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Now, if you want to, you can say negative 3 times negative 2 equals positive 6, because a negative times a negative is positive. And over here, I have negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4, because a negative times a negative is positive. And then 6 times 4 equals 24. So my answer for 10 is simply 24. Now with number 11, we go back to this being a little bit different. It's going to be negative 1 for that negative sign times 5 times 5, much like that red example we did in the beginning. 5 times 5 is 25, times negative 1 is negative 25. So for that, your answer is negative 25. All right, let's go ahead and check out the algebraic ones next. All right, so the directions say evaluate the expression when A is negative 3, A equals negative 3, B is positive 4, and C is negative 6. So for number 12, I'm going to have negative 3 times negative 6. And so 3 times 6 is 18, and I have 2 negatives, which is an even amount, so it's a positive answer. Or a negative times a negative is positive. So our answer is positive 18. Now for number 13. If you remember, this is the absolute value sign. The absolute value sign tells you that anything inside of it will come out as positive in the end, okay? So, no matter what. So I've got a, which is negative 3, squared. So I have negative 3 times negative 3 times 6, times b, which is 4. So then I have negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Oops. That's positive 9 times 4. And positive 9 times positive 4 gets us 36, which this absolute value of 36 is 36. Basically, the absolute value tells you how far a number is from 0. So 36 is 36 units away from 0. All right, so number 14. For number 14, we have negative 6 squared. Now, since we're doing c squared, it means the entire letter c times itself. So it's really doing c times c. So it's really negative 6 times negative 6 minus a, which is negative 3, times b, which is 4. So negative 6 times negative 6 is 36 minus negative 3 times 4, which is negative 12. And if you remember from our lesson on subtracting integers, I'm going to do leave, change, opposite. So 36, and then change this to addition, and the opposite of negative 12 is positive 12. So 36 plus 12 is 48. And that is it with our lesson. Hopefully this helps you out. Best of luck. Oh yeah, and always remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for post notifications. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.